Hi, welcome to the second part of the course Responsive Web Application with Bootstrap and CSS. This part is the introduction to Bootstrap part. We're going to get familiar with Bootstrap, how we can install it and use it in our own computer, and the whole general ideas about using Bootstrap, and then make ourselves more familiar with this very nice and practical CSS framework. My name is Farhad Eftekari and I'm the lecturer of this course. Before starting with the material, make sure you are already registered and accepted in this course. You can use this link in order to get access to the portal. Here are some typographical conventions that we're going to use throughout the material of the course. You're going to encounter them at the bottom of each slide, so make sure to make yourself familiar with them. And here are some difficulty level indicator. It's up to the student how deep they want to gain the knowledge. Some material will categorize as easy, some moderate, and some hard for the ones that want to really get familiar with advanced topics. Here is the slide framework. You can see the title, difficulty level indicator, slide number here, the content, course name, section name, and those icons that we actually discussed. So in this part of the course, first we're gonna get familiar with CSS frameworks, how Bootstrap got started, how we can get and install Bootstrap, content delivery network, what is it, and how we can get the best out of it in Bootstrap. Compatibility, Chrome developer tools, we're going to get familiar. It's a very handy tool in order to use its tools, and actually many nice features it has. How to get us started, how to set up and run a page with Bootstrap. The grid system, which is very practical and very important for our own knowledge about the whole idea, how to place the elements and how to assign certain size to element. The concept of mobile first or mobile last, and then how we can work with images in Bootstrap, and then for images the thumbnails, responsiveness of the image, aligning them, shadows, overlays, patterns, hover effects, and also getting familiar with the whole community and how we can have access to very nice material online in order to solve our problems, or just for the good read and getting the best out of this community. Now let's familiar with some definitions. HTML, as we all know, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. SASS or sass stands for Synthetically Awesome Style Sheets. And NPM also stands for Not Package Manager. CDN, as we said, stands for Content Delivery Network. All right, now let's for a minute discuss actually why we are using Bootstrap and what's like the origin purpose of such framework has been created. Like 10 years ago, when I was creating my own websites and applications, I had to somehow invent the wheel for myself. I had to create some sort of a guideline, some sort of a styles for like sizing of the elements. It used to be much more difficult. Like back then, the responsiveness of the websites, different kind of resolutions. Mobiles weren't that much popular. People, internet speed wasn't that much for people to also use their mobile phones. The devices weren't that much like sophisticated. So it was such a chaos and such a big portion of the job for developers and web designers to set up the whole project in the beginning, to create the layouts and the frameworks and everything. So back then, the websites designs were like very different than each other. Well, it could be some sort of a innovative thing, but on the other hand, when it comes to user interface, when it comes to user experience, it was like such a chaos. You had to get yourself familiar how this website's gonna like react, and how are the different approaches, how I can go to different pages, what is this element about. The great thing about Bootstrap is it's some sort of a universal guideline. So there are many cases. Of course, you also like somehow notice this fact that like you go to a website, you are already familiar with the buttons, you're already familiar with the menu. So this is a great progress when it comes to user experience. So this is how Bootstrap significantly are like reducing the setup time which is needed for the projects and developers and designers to like start working and designing a website, putting it all aside, and now they consider and spend their time on the things that really matters. Like by using this some sort of puzzles and Legos, then they create very nicely looking responsive websites and web pages. So that was a whole I tried my best to in a very short way describe like why it has been created. And actually there is this website archive.org. You can go there and then see how websites used to look like before these kind of nice CSS frameworks. And then you also get more knowledge like how significantly such CSS frameworks made our websites much more good looking, and also with the user experience and everything. All right, now let's see what is a framework. A framework is a way as a guideline or a standard conventions for like different kind of concepts, practices, and actually how we look at the problems, how we look at different kind of approaches in order to create something, and then as an output of using this framework as an input, then our project being created. So we have different kind of frameworks, and now CSS frameworks actually help us in order to use their own guidelines and standard definitions in order to create pages and then use and apply them on like different kind of page elements. So basically a framework is the combination of CSS and JavaScript files. Well, CSS framework, combination of CSS and JavaScript files with this defined guidelines, with these defined styles. As we previously in the previous actually part of the course, we got familiar with CSS. So consider some developers came and created those classes and put them inside of these predefined CSS and JavaScript files for the other developers to actually use. So by using these classes and names, we are actually getting the best out of those CSS rules. So that's the whole concept of CSS framework. And now let's get familiar with different layers of a web page. So we have data layer. Well, it depends what kind of technology we are using. So we are storing data inside of our databases. And then we have application layer or backend, which contains the logical and operation of the website. We have different kind of languages for that: ASP.NET, PHP, Python, Ruby, Java, or the other ones, which they also have some sort of a framework. And then we have a presentation layer, which is a front end part. And then we have different languages for that, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then also frameworks such as Bootstrap, Foundation, Grid Systems, and different kind of frameworks. So the target of this course is this part, and specifically with this framework Bootstrap. And it's very important for selecting a right CSS framework for your own need. So as we discussed earlier, what are the advantages and why actually we use Bootstrap? So it's nice to know significantly it will increase the speed of installation and ease of understanding how things are being defined. We don't need to actually worry about them or create our own classes. And then different kind of options we are having by using these CSS frameworks. And then of course integration with other systems, and then long-term support, because these frameworks are very popular. With every edition, with every version, many bugs which are being reported are getting fixed, and new features are getting added to the whole framework. So there's a very nice community behind these frameworks. So it's really important to choose a very nice and well-known framework that everybody are almost like using, and there's a great community behind it because of these reasons that we actually discussed. Now let's see what are the advantages and disadvantages of using CSS frameworks. For advantages, well, of course, it speeds up the mockup process. It's clean and tidy code. It's already been created. Many developers participated in order to create such clean and tidy code. And there are like common CSS problems about the responsiveness and different aspects of web design. So they already got together and then came up with these solutions. And browser compatibility is a very important problem that it used to be with different kind of versions and different kind of browsers. So they also really consider different kind of browsers. And then there are like great practices about different kind of like aspects of like web design creation. And then since you have a single procedure to resolve common problems, then of course it's gonna make it much easier to maintain various projects that you're having. And then also when you're working as a group, then it's much easier to communicate about different elements, how to use them, because well, if people are already familiar with that CSS framework, then they already know what are the Legos of the puzzles of this whole procedure to work with. And of course there could be some disadvantages which we also like to discuss. So we can mention like mixing content and presentation, and then unused code leftover, because there is like big chunk of code being created, and then of course we are not using all of them. We are not using all the elements or different kind of classes. So then we are like somehow sending the whole framework to the user, and then probably we can argue that if we were like writing the code by ourselves, then the size of the CSS files were like slightly less than the size of Bootstrap CSS Framework. And of course they have a slower learning curve because well, you need to get familiar with the whole grid system, with the whole different kind of features they have, but in the long run they also could like benefit. You can benefit from them. And then you don't learn them by yourself. You need to actually use some material or online community or something in order to get familiar how they actually work. Now we want to very little get familiar with sass and less. So there's a concept that is pre-processing. It's nice to get familiar with it. So instead of writing your CSS code, you can pre-process the whole procedure. So you write a code and then somehow you compile the code, and then as an output you receive your CSS syntaxes. Well, it's also nice to get familiar with the term compile. A compile is a computer program that transfers your source code into a programming language into another computer language. So that's the whole definition of the term compile. And then we have sass and less. So as an extension of CSS, then you can add nested rules, variables, mixins, operators, selector inheritances, and more. Well, it's nice because you can define variables, and then based on these variables, actually, you get the size, you get some sort of values for those variables. And then less, which stands for actually write less, do more. It's also a competitor to sass, so some sort of a same functionality in a way. And actually don't worry about sass and less, because I just want you to get familiar with them, because we really need a certain course for them in order to teach them. But it's nice to know there are like some input here we can have as variables, function, mixins, nesting, operators, and then the compiler actually as an output create the CSS file for us. I totally recommend you after this course actually make yourself more familiar with sass and less. We will try our best to create the course as soon as possible. Here also you can see the example in both sass and less. You see here the color is a variable, and the variable has been defined before. So then when you're like using it as an output, then the CSS code is being something like this. At first it may be like reducing your speed, but in the long run it will increase your speed of development. And here is a brief comparison between sass and less, which you can also see by yourself. All right, we already talked about the reason behind Bootstrap has been created and what are the advantages for such CSS framework. So let's jump into actually using it. Here are the original developers, these very nice guys. And since those guys used to work also in Twitter while they were creating such framework, also Twitter is like being considered as the creator of that CSS framework as well. Here is a small piece of information about Twitter. And to get Bootstrap, it's very easy. You just need to go to this website, click download, and then download compiled CSS and JS format. So let's just quickly go to Get Bootstrap website. So the website name is not Bootstrap, it's getbootstrap.com. And here you can press download button. And then there are different ways of actually getting Bootstrap files. Later we will get familiar with them, but you just need to download this compiled CSS and JS item, and then the whole files would be downloaded to your computer. So let's see what choices we have. We have compiled CSS and JS. We have source files from GitHub. We can use Bootstrap CDN. We can use package managers. These different ones that I listed here are the most well-known ones. So now let's get familiar what is CDN. CDN is Content Delivery Network or Content Distribution Network. So they store these files in a super fast and nice server, and then you just can like use them, the address of that actually CDN, and that's it. So here you can see as an example, this CSS file and JavaScript file is being hosted here. So they are like Bootstrap CDN version 4. So that's it. So this URL is for like the CSS file, and this URL is for JavaScript file. And later we'll also tell that you need jQuery as well when you're using Bootstrap. It's the only requirement for using Bootstrap, so there's also this CDN of jQuery. And actually I'd like to mention that you need to place them in the header, in the head tag of your HTML page. Here you can also see those links. And then we have also package managers. Package managers also help you to install packages, and then CSS framework, Bootstrap CSS framework also being considered as a package. So if you're using npm, all you need to do is type this command, If you're using Nugget, all you can do is like type the other one and then Ruby gems or Composer also the other comments. But if you're not familiar with them, don't make it very complicated for yourself. Already use the CDN or download this CSS and JS file and just use it. Although it could be nice that you search more about these package managers, especially this npm is like very practical. So it's nice to get to know more about that. And also, of course, you can use the GitHub repository of Bootstrap. And then, in my opinion, I think they have different versions also being hosted. Although you need the most updated one, which is this version 4. But it's fine to use the other versions maybe in many ways. But I recommend you to use this version 4, which when we were like recording these videos, this was the beta 2 was like the latest edition. And also, if you want to make yourself familiar with Git, there is a course mastering version control with Git, which has 6 credits. You can also enroll in that course. Alright, now let's see when we actually download the file what we're gonna encounter. So when you download this CSS and JS file from Bootstrap website, there are 2 folders, CSS and JS. In the CSS file, here are different CSS files which contain inside of the CSS file. So we have like Bootstrap file and then we have minified files. So it's nice to know that when you're using in development environment, it's nice to use this regular file, but when you're using in development environment, it's recommended to use the minified file, because by using minified files, they already get rid of the spaces and they made the file much smaller, but the functionality is exactly the same. So it will increase the speed of download and the performance probably will like be increased. But they are small enough to not really maybe consider that much, but I still recommend you to use minified file for your production environment. And also for the JS folder, you can see the list of the JavaScript files. Also, normal files and minified files are being available. Yeah, as I also already explained, the concept of minification is to make the file smaller, because the browser is reading the file, not humans. So they usually change the variable names, which is long, to like 1 character, or get rid of the spaces, get rid of the inters. So by applying such actually rules, then the output file will be a bit smaller. So as an example here, you can see if we minify this JavaScript code, it becomes like this. So some spaces are being saved. Here also you can see, like as an example, there's a big JavaScript file, CSS file that becomes like something like this. It's harder to read, of course, but the browser doesn't really care. So it's a nice thing to do to reduce the spaces, to reduce the size of a file. And you don't need to actually do it by yourself. If you want to also apply them on your CSS files, they are like different websites which give you these online tools in order to receive your file, and then as an output you can download your minified file. It's nice to do it sometimes even for your HTML files. So when we talk about compatibility, actually it's nice to know Bootstrap supports the latest stable release of all major browsers and platforms. So we have different kind of devices that users can have and different kind of browsers that could be installed on those devices. And here also there's a table where you can see in which devices, which browsers can be installed, and then whether Bootstrap support them or not. Where you can see if actually you can use these browsers in these devices, then all of them Bootstrap support. Like you can use them there as well. So you don't need to be worried about the support of Bootstrap on those devices and browsers. And also you can see on different operating systems, then also when you are installing those browsers, also Bootstrap is getting supported there. Now let's get familiar with Chrome Developer Tools. It's a very nice handy tool that you can use in Google browser. Actually, it's recommended for all the web developers and web designers to take advantage of this tool. It's very, very easy to actually find it. There are many ways. For instance, we want to see this part of the code, so right click, inspect, and then developer tools being visible here. And then you can also very easily find the part of the page which you are looking forward to, and then go deeper and then see how they're like wrote this code. And there are like different kind of tabs that you can also see and get the best out of. And actually you can also select here and then very easily you can find developer tools from here. So this was also another way to open this very handy tool. It's a great approach if you go to websites actually and then view their source code, see how they actually use this kind of frameworks and styles and everything, and actually you can also go deeper. So if you select on a CSS file and everything, then you can also see the exact code for that certain file as well. So you're not only limited to the page, you can be able to actually go and browse the other files as well. If you also get back to this tool, then you can see here actually with the CSS files also you are able to browse and then see the classes, exact files, and actually you can also modify something. So here I'm gonna just modify and add test in the middle as well, and now you see it as a content of this page coming from Bootstrap, but we modified it. And let's see, let's also let's see this button. I'm gonna mess up something about this button. Let's find the class here. I'm gonna add, instead of button, I'm gonna write button 1. So see, now the button is like somehow messed up. It's a very, very nice handy tool. As I said, you can browse around and find source codes by yourself. And also it has different capabilities, so it's also very, very interesting features. All right, now let's get started with creating HTML file, HTML5 page. I am gonna copy paste this page, the content here. Let's get back to Atom. All right, now I'm gonna save the page here. And here we can see the page we saved. So if we see the source code, this is exactly actually what we copy pasted. This is the page in the browser. So we're going to use it as a base of the other codes that we're going to add to this page. So there are two important files which are needed to be added. First, this CSS Bootstrap file, and then second, the JavaScript file. So when we downloaded this CSS and JavaScript file, make sure the CSS and JavaScript folder is also available. So what I did now is to create this Bootstrap folder, and then I have my index.html file, and then the CSS folder and JS folder. And now let's add these other two lines here. Actually, I replaced this file here, so I'm gonna close it and drag this one here. Okay, now it's fine. All right, now let's open this index file. So let's see what is being shown in the console. So this error is being shown, and the reason for that is we haven't added jQuery yet to the page, and jQuery is the only required file which is needed for Bootstrap to actually work, the JavaScript file of it. It's like a dependency that we need to also add jQuery. Let's add jQuery, and then let's see if that thing gonna be resolved. We can download it from here. Let's just do that. Let's open another tab, and then let's see how we can download. I'm gonna try compressed production jQuery 3.2.1. All right, I'm gonna copy paste it in this JS folder. Now let's get back to Atom. And here we can also add this piece of the code here. So we are including this jQuery JavaScript file there as well. And you need to make sure that first you are adding this jQuery file, and then next line this bootstrap.js file. And the reason is because we need this code to be loaded first and then apply that. So let me just save it here for you to also see. Now when I refresh, interesting. Let's see what is missing. 321JS. 321JS. Okay, it seems fine. Oh, actually, one thing I wasn't considering, this min part, because I downloaded the minified file. All right, now if I save it, let's see. Okay. So this name is still here. Something is wrong. Let's see. Let's solve it together. Oh, actually, oh my God. I put it there. Like the bootstrap is fine. So if I get here, 3.21 min. Okay, now if I save it, refresh, all right. Still something is missing. Okay. Let's get back. All right, now the jQuery part is fine, at least. Let's move on. Let's go a bit further. Let's see, we can also now load the other components. But we already solved that problem. So one thing I also wanted to show you was if we change the position of these two lines, let me save it and let me refresh this page. Now you see still, now we get this jQuery error. And the reason was like the reason that I already explained. This file needs to be ahead of the other one because we need some JavaScript code which we already included here in jQuery file, and then load the other one. Okay, let's move on. Now we also need to add three different tags inside of the head tag. This one, and this one. All right, let me copy paste this code here. And now if we get back to the browser, hit refresh, and then you can see it's totally fine here. There could be some my local computer issue here, so let's not be worried about them because seems like everything is already functioning. So yeah, these were the three different meta tags that we added. It was like kind of needed in order to make this page work. And if we now look at the source code, we can see these meta tags are there. The title of the page, the link to the Bootstrap CSS file. Later we will be familiar with this Jumbotron as one of the components. All right. Perfect. Now we have our very first page created from Bootstrap. Let's get back to the slides. All right, now we also got the exact same view. I hope you're also following this the steps in order to download and use all of the source code that we provided here. It's very important actually you be able to set up your environment. You can also try the other methods such as CDN or package manager. Would be a nice test for you to try them as well. Alright, now let's get familiar with Bootstrap grid system. It's really also important to understand the grid system. So in order to structure a website, we need this foundation of Bootstrap Framework, because it's the whole thing that relies on the grid system. So basically we can define different rows, and then by the grid system we can also define the columns and then place the elements in a very nice and perfect way in a specific size and a portion of the page we are looking forward to in those columns of the grid system. So here is one example. So what Bootstrap is doing is dividing the width of the page into 12 exact same size. Some other frameworks have different systems. Some have 24, some have maybe 10. So Bootstrap is using 12, which is also a very nice number because 12 can be divided into by 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Then we can also define and allocate multiple columns to one single column. Later we will understand how we can do that. So this is a 12 column, 12 size column, and then this is 6, this is 6, this one is 5, this one is 7. So we need to make sure always the sum of these columns are 12. So see 4, 4, 4 will be 12, and then 2 plus 3 plus 7 will also be 12, or 12 one column. Here in another example, you can see a full width, half width, 1/3, 2/3, this is third, and then 1/4, and then the other way around. Different examples for you to get familiar with it. And now it's a very important concept, this extra small, medium, large, and extra large. So when we are viewing our page in a device which the screen is below 576 pixel, the page is being considered as extra small. And these are the other numbers. So if it's like greater than this number but below this number, then the size of the screen is being considered as a small. So we can allocate different classes to that grid in order to make them arrange in like different order according to different screen sizes. It's a very, very interesting and practical concept. So when we are like dealing with extra small, then we can allocate here, instead of this star sign, from 1 to 12, and then also applying another rule for small screens with SM, and then assigning one other value for that, and also for the other one. So we can somehow allocate different multiple classes for different sizes of the screen as well. Actually, later we also be more familiar with these classes in a practical way. And of course, we can also rearrange the columns. So here you can see we are like assigning, allocating this flex-first class. So it makes it this one to be like in the first order, and then this one is last, and then this one is unordered. So it becomes like right after the first one. It's also a very nice practice. And then also we have offset columns. Here you can see there is no space here. Let's see what is the reason. The reason is this little guy, offset -MD-3. It means when we are in a like this kind of medium size of a screen, then give me 3 column offset. So place this one like from the 4th until 5, 6, and then 7. But this one, as you can see here, there is no offset, so it starts from column 1 and then up to column 4. And here you can see we have offset MD4 for this one, so that's the reason we have this here for nothing like included here as a 4 grid size. Let's go with the last one here. We have here column MD6, and then 3 is here with nothing, and then 3 here, because the combination of this row is 12. So here we have 6, and then we already told the browser that we need like 3 offset. Very easy to use and very nice and handy. And you may ask, what would happen if we had 2 offset in a single column? And the answer would be the smallest one would be applied. But you can also try it by yourself and then see what will happen if actually you have 2 offsets here. And also inside of one row, we can also add another row. Here you can see after this column, then we define the row here. So then another row will be added here, and then we have also columns of that row as well. We call that nesting. It's also very practical and sometimes very useful thing to do. Make sure to try all of this code by yourself to see how they work. It's a very nice and practical practice, and actually I provided the code here so you can easily copy paste it and try it by yourself if you are using a PDF version. And here you can see different browser size. So here you can see exactly how we are like using these rows and columns. So by allocating this X large, large, medium, small, and extra small classes, then the look of the grids and columns, the order of them, and the limit of like how many row we want to show, how many column we want to show in a row, it's also different. You can easily create this grid system for different screen size by yourself. Actually, in the assignment, we also have exact same exercise for that. All right, here is also a common figure on the internet where you can find the difference between mobile first and mobile last. So when we are having this approach of mobile first, then you see in all of the devices, it looks totally fine. The responsiveness of the pages and everything is like according to the screen size. But when we are having mobile last, the web page looks perfect in a bigger screen, such as a desktop, laptop. And then when we are like viewing the page in a tablet or phone, then you see it's not very interesting to look. So always try to go with this approach, because nowadays the number of mobile users is like increasing all the time, the percentage of users. When you look at the a statistic of web pages and websites, even in Facebook, like I read it somewhere that now more than half of the people actually use Facebook on their mobile phones. So it's a very, very important aspect to consider when you are like designing your web page and website. And you always need to analyze your website, get the best out of the inspect button in Google Chrome, and then go to developer tools and see what are the errors, how it look like. And actually it's a very interesting handy tool. Let me just show it to you if you already don't know about it. Okay, so if you go to TechClass website, this is the desktop view. Works fine. Now select inspect. Here there's this very nice interesting icon. When I click on it, now I can see how the website is gonna look in different devices. So if I select iPhone 7, this is going to be the width and height of iPhone 7, and then we can browse the website and web page to see how it looks like. Very interesting tool. And actually you can rotate the screen. So now I rotated the screen now. And if I select a tablet here, you see also looks fine. The menu as well, to see how it also looks like in a mobile phone. So get the best out of this tool if you weren't already familiar with it. It's a very, very interesting and beneficial tool when you're creating your pages, to make sure the responsiveness of your pages are totally also fine. We already analyzed the website, TechClass. It's also a nice practice if you go to other websites and do the same. Would be interesting. All right, now let's get familiar with the tools and features we have in order to work with images in Bootstrap. We can define classes. We can use the classes that has been defined for thumbnails, set the responsiveness of the image, the align, shadows, overlays, patterns, and hover effect. There are three very nice classes in order to use when it comes to working with images in Bootstrap: image rounded, image circle, and image thumbnail. Here you can see the effect of using these classes. So when you are having a image and then applying this class to it, then you see it's gonna be like this. Let's try. Let's actually, I'm gonna create one folder, name it img, stands for image, and now I'm gonna find the image. Okay, now I put this file, which the name is classroom.jpg. Okay. First, I'm gonna just put it there. Okay. Everything seems fine. So now that I saved it and want to see. Okay, now you can see the image is like this here, which is a good thing. Actually, one thing I would like to also mention is this weird error where you can see here. The reason is not because of us. So if we search online, there's this Stack Overflow article. So turns out in the new release, something is missing from Bootstrap, and it's recommended we add also this CDN there in order to fix it. But I don't recommend it now because it's just an error that we're gonna see here. So it's nothing related to us. If you also saw this, popper is not defined, but we're gonna leave and work with that. Probably in the near future they're gonna fix it. So don't worry about this error. All right. Now I also added this class image rounded here. So now when I save it, when I refresh, nothing changed. Interesting. Let's see if we make any mistakes, any typo. No, everything is fine. Let's see the documentation. Oh, it's interesting. So now when we look at this piece of code, in the new edition, they changed image rounded to rounded. So make sure always when you encounter some errors like this, I'm gonna ask you to fix also this. Okay. So now here we have the class rounded. Then I save it, refresh. Okay, now you see these small round parts also got added. I'm gonna also add the other two classes just to make sure they are right now. I'm gonna add one break here. Oops. Okay. Was it circle or circled? Circle. Okay, now I'm gonna save it. Seems like it's not working. Let's get back. Let's add two more break here. Let's see. No. Let's search. I'm not sure if they changed it to something else or This one seems like a series image. The thumbnail. So we need to also modify that. So let's try image thumbnail. Save. Probably they use also rounded class in some other thing and then they merge the whole thing together. Okay, now you can see here this frame got added as a thumbnail. So now all we need to do is to see what is the other circle one. I'm really interested to know if they still support it or not. Bootstrap 4. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Huh, now they change it to rounded circle. That's interesting. Let's see. They totally changed like the first one and the second one in a way that, okay, that was interesting. That was very funny. Now let me also modify the slides here, rounded circle. This one is a still image thumbnail. So now it makes me really kind of laugh. That is like this one changed from image that rounded to rounded. This one is rounded circle and this one is still image the thumbnail. So these two change in a total different way and this one is still the same. Alright, well it's fine now, it's okay, all of them are working. Now you see we can't get the best out of them. So this is a very nice and interesting piece of code in order to make your images look much nicer and good looking. But I'm happy that you actually tried them, otherwise it would be a bit misleading for you if you haven't ever used them. But now these three are the exact proper classes. But when mistakes like this happens, as we also search and then we look for the problem, you can always find solutions online. Of course, you can always ask me in the portal, but it's nice thing to do that first you try to solve and find the answer by yourselves, because that's what's going to happen in real life situations. Whenever they introduce a new version, whenever you're working on your own projects in a company or somewhere, then it's really recommended and needed actually to find answers by yourself, because they are always constantly being improved and new versions and additions are being introduced. So sometimes there are some compatibility issues, or sometimes some errors or mistakes happenings, and sometimes they change something to something else. So it's always nice to search online and find it by yourself. And here are also classes that you can use to make a image responsive, and what it does is adding this two different properties to your image. And for aligning an image, all you need to do is use these classes. So if you want to put it on left, then float left, right, float right, but we don't have float center. All you need to do is put your image between inside of one div tag and then have this text dash center. So whatever you place inside here, then they all getting placed in the center. And if you want to apply shadows for your image or div elements, then you can also apply these classes. So the bigger the number is, the shadow is also a bit further. They have the same order actually, these class names and the image that you can see as example here. And then also we have this overlay. By using this class, then you can see you have your image here and then this mask, and then you see you can actually insert a text over an image. It's a nice example. Actually, you can also try it by yourself to see how it works. And here you can see that also by applying these classes, then you can also apply these patterns. And this is exact same order with the examples you're seeing here. And you can also apply these hover effects by yourself to see how they work. This one was really cool once I tried it. So when you're like having your mouse over that element, then there's a nice effect. Now let's talk a little bit about the power of community of Bootstrap. So there are different communities which you can also get the best out of. The Bootstrap official GitHub repository is available in this link. You can actually download all these different various versions of Bootstrap, even the old ones. Sometimes in some projects you may need like a bit more outdated like version of Bootstrap, so you can also get it from there. And here we have Bootstrap official documentation. You can rely on the material there as well. If something changed, then that's the first place actually they modify them. And then we have Bootstrap blog, Bootstrap Expo, and of course in Stack Overflow, it's a very, very nice and handy community in order to find a solution for the problems you encounter. Usually when you search for something in Google, then the first links for the solutions for those problems are from Stack Overflow. Make sure to visit all of these pages and make yourself familiar with them. It's very, very nice to, when you have time, also browse around and find more material. Here also you can find some links for further study about these topics. And make sure if there was any mistakes in the slides, report us, or if there was any topic that you would like to find out more about, but we weren't including in the content of the course, you can always ask for them, and when we are updating the material, we can also include them. And if you have some ideas or have some feedback, feel free to always give it to us, because we really look forward for your feedback. So here it was the ending of the second part of this course, which was Introduction to Bootstrap. We got ourselves familiar how we can actually install and use Bootstrap, different ways of downloading them, and then some characteristics of Bootstrap, and then working with images and some related content and topics about this. I hope you had a nice time, and thank you for your consideration, and looking forward to see you on the third part of the course.